what is your strongest chakra, your strength, and what is your weakest chakra. And today, whatever you identified as your weakest chakra, we're going to start bridging on that soul work today with today's soul work. And we're going to start looking at more of how do we get into the whole basis of chakra healing? How does it work? How do we go into the depths of understanding patterns and programming, etc.? You could share in the comments what is your strongest chakra. And because if you don't want to reveal your weakest chakra, that's fine. But let's focus on what is your strength? What is your strongest chakra that you felt from the entire conversation yesterday? I'd love to know in the comments, what was your strongest chakra do you feel? So here's the thing. A lot of us, when we hear the term chakras, what does our thoughts go to? We go to color therapy, yoga asanas, essential oils, crystal healing, and a lot of it's kind of external. And I know I drive in this point a lot, but if you're new here, there's a reason why I drive in this point. And this is because I find that this is only one part of understanding the chakra system. There's a whole other world beyond just learning about crystal healing and yoga asanas and all these beautiful tools that I consider amplifiers. Here's the thing. I do believe that yoga has a place. I do believe crystals has a place. I do believe Reiki even has a place. But when it comes to looking at internal work, this is a whole different conversation because we're working with our internal state of consciousness, our programming, our mindset, our beliefs, our emotions, and our behaviors. These are different components of the chakras that are not talked about enough. And when we look at how empowering the chakras is about learning how to empower your chakra pattern, we have to start going back to the basic of what the heck is a pattern? Because when we start to look at when we have a particular illness or a particular thought, like a negative spiral, or we have maybe mental clutter that's stopping us from taking action, a lot of the times it's coming back to understanding a pattern. Now, when we look at our chakras in terms of understanding mindset, we have to also see that it's more than just mindset. Because, here I can talk mindset all the live long day, but at the same time, I'm not connecting that to the body. And the body work is just important as that mindset work. So here's the thing. We can see that when we speak about the chakras in terms of color therapy, yoga asanas, crystals, those are external tools to help you. Now, at the same time, yoga is also a mind-body practice, right? So it's a body practice. So you can see that there's mental practices, there's body practices, and I believe there's soul practices as well. But when it comes to the chakras, we have to realize that real internal healing is from our internal state of consciousness. It is not always necessarily an external tool. And that's why the power of programming is so crucial and so important to chakra healing. And when it comes to looking at our chakras in general, we have to realize that a lot of them are dominated around programming because when we look at how energy works, it also connects to how our mind works. So at the core root of everything is energy. Everything is energy. We learned this on day one. But when it comes to looking at how do we go beyond that? How do we go beyond, okay, everything's just energy? Well, how the heck do I understand energy? How do I understand how does energy work? How do I understand what is even going on with energy? How do I shift energy? What does it mean to shift energy? What the heck does that even mean? So a lot of the times it's kind of very aloof. It's very mysterious, like we're talking, magic. And here's the thing. It's not magic. It's about understanding how energy works. Energy works with your thoughts, with your emotions, with your behaviors. All of these things are dominated around energy. You have thoughts. Those thoughts have energy. Those emotions have energy. Your behaviors have energy. Everything we do and say and be is energetic at its core. It's vibrating, it's oscillating. When we have particular ways of doing things, we have rising energy and lowering energy, right? We have low vibes and high vibes. And this is all coming back to the fact that when we shift energy, we're shifting our programming. When we shift energy, we're shifting an emotion out of our body. We're shifting and releasing an emotion. If you were to just think about, last time you cried, like it felt like a release, right? Because you're releasing that energy. In the same regard, we don't always see that the chakras are connected this way because we're not seeing that it's connected to our thoughts. And this was the missing piece for me that shed so much light because it allowed me to see that it's more than just affirmation work. It's more than just yoga asanas, and it's more than just playing with crystals. It's an interconnected system that is working with the mind-body connection. I always like to say that when we use these terms, limited beliefs, energetic block, I don't want you to ever think that it's like a big, scary monster that's impossible to deal with, because that's not necessarily true. A lot of the times, healing is maintenance. Healing is a process. Healing is about a fluctuation of energy. Energy is moving, right? It ebbs and flows. So it's not always going to be one static thing. But a lot of the times when you do this work, what you'll find is that you need less maintenance. You need less work. You are finding that you're more emotionally stable. You have that more of emotional fulfillment in your daily life. Sure, something might piss you off. Sure, you might have PMS, but like you're going to have way less work. And that's like the whole thing with chakra healing is it's about energy maintenance, I find. Okay. All right. So I see some people. Yes. Hi, how's it going? Are you ready for day 2? We are about to get started. I kind of gave you a little bit of a primer on what we're about to get ready to talk about. When it comes to mindset, the hugest thing I really, really want to emphasize is programming. What the heck is programming? Because how does that connect to the chakra system? So today I really want to focus on how does our mindset influence the chakra system? And I kind of gave you a bit of a teaser, a taste of that yesterday when we talked a lot about how the throat chakra is connected to someone's mindset. And when they have a fear of being seen or being heard, that connects to their mind. And then they don't allow themselves to show up in a more powerful way that they would if they believed that they felt safe to be seen and heard. So you can start to see that this is just one primary example of how when we have a throat chakra imbalance, for example, we might have a really hard time being seen. We might have a really time like feeling heard in our given reality. And so we're having thoughts about that. We're having emotions about that. And we start to take action or we don't take action and we have inaction because of that. And you can see how those thoughts played into those emotions and those emotions played into those behaviors. Now, that is what is a pattern. A pattern is created from our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions, our behaviors. I'm going to say actions and behaviors are kind of interchangeable because they're kind of the same thing, but those emotions are dominated around your actions. And those actions are what produce your results. And so when we look at how everything works as a whole, we have energy, thought, emotion, action, habit, result. And if you were to just look at that simple framework, that is how your mind works. Your mind is working from the energetic level all the way to your manifested result, your manifestation. And so we have these in a, like I like to see it's like a circle. It's like a circle. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that you are experiencing and it's looping in your nervous system. And this is programming. This is the programming that maybe you inherited or you consciously created yourself. And I like to say both because if you are more of a conscious being, a conscious human, then you might know a little bit more about manifestation. So I don't want to rule that out. But in terms of looking at a lot of our programming was inherited and it's unconscious. It is literally unconscious programming. In terms of the spiritual community, we call this unconscious programming or old paradigm programming. This is the term we're talking about. We're talking about 0 to 7, we downloaded all this programming from our parents and their generation and their generation and their generation and their generation and so forth. So I like to call it's the ancestral line. And the programming from our ancestors was passed down to our parents, then passed down to their parents and passed down to their parents. And it's our job to become conscious to change that programming. And that is what we're here to talk about today. And when you look at how unconscious programming is, you might have found that you might have downloaded some junk programming. You might have downloaded things that don't serve you. And because of this, we have this awareness of like, this really feels misaligned in my body. This really feels off. It doesn't feel good to me. It feels misaligned. It feels low vibe. It feels negative. It doesn't feel like it serves me. It feels like a lot of drama. And that's because it's unconscious programming. It's misaligned from who you truly are. And a lot of this, what I like to call, we have to find that authentic programming. We have to find, who are we beyond our programming? Who are we beyond all the bullshit we've been fed? And if you can find that place, that's where amazing, transformative, emotional healing can happen, because you can start to see that you're so much more than your past programming. You have the choice to choose your programming. And a lot of that is connected to your patterns. And a lot of that is connected to your thoughts. So it's like we make blocks and limited beliefs and all of these things really heavy in our mind, and they make it into such like a mysterious thing. But at the end of the day, it's really our thoughts. It's our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. And because of that, we have to see that our programming is connected through the chakra system. And our programming as a whole is, we can pinpoint and kind of almost dissect where it's coming from because of the chakra system. And I find this is where it gets really, really cool, because you can start to see how like we talked about on day one, like your money mindset, for example, a lot of that stems from the root chakra, your habits around money, your beliefs about money, your actions around money, and most of all, your thoughts that you have on a consistent basis. All that is connected to the root chakra. But we aren't necessarily told this, right? And then when we look at our action, the beliefs we have about action, our emotions about how we're taking action is all connected to the solar plexus chakra. So this mindset component is so huge because we're not connecting the dots of how these patterns are coming to be. And when we look at how these thoughts are happening, then we can start to see that the emotion is driving the action. And it's coming from our energy. It's coming from the energy behind that belief. It's coming behind the energy of that thought, and so forth. So you can start to see there's a domino effect occurring behind the scenes. And this is ruling your life. This is literally how you're manifesting. This is how you're showing up. And most importantly, that programming is running from what I like to call the observer effect. Now, if you're not familiar with the observer effect, basically this is something that's known in physics, where we've discovered that the observer effect is how a lot of our society is run. Is what we observe is what we attract into our lives. And it's due to something called our RAS, our reticular activating system. And because of this observer effect, you are literally observing reality like a sponge, and you're observing that, and then you start to attract that because that's how you grew up, right? And so as we get older, we don't change that. We have just stayed with that observer programming that we inherited, and we decide to not change it. And that's where the patterns become a problem, because they're starting to become unconscious. They're unconscious, and they're kind of running the script of your life. And you might not necessarily even like it. You might not necessarily even know that it's yours. It might not even be yours. It could be your parents. It could be your grandparents, and so forth. It could be something from the Great Depression era. How do you know? When you look at how programming is created, a lot of it is unconscious. And so it's our job to make it conscious. And see, here's the problem here. We have a lot of people running around with unconscious programming, and they don't realize that they can make it conscious. This is the problem. This is why so many people have energy blocks. This is why we have a lot of imbalanced energy, misalignment, struggle, drama, etc. It's because of our programming. That programming plays a crucial role because it's holding our beliefs, and our beliefs are dominating the entire show. And what does this have to do with the chakras? Well, we can start to see how you can use the chakras as a map to understand where that programming is coming from, which means that's where the energy is blocked or imbalanced or misaligned. And I like to use these words interchangeably because when it comes to looking at the chakras, it's not necessarily that you have a block. It might just be as simple as a mental disturbance or mental clutter you need to clean up. And this is where the conversation gets kind of sticky because we can realize that some person might have a block or they might just have mental or emotional clutter that they need to clean up, essentially. Okay, so I saw some comments come in. Awesome. Yes. Heart chakra. Lots of heart chakra and third eye. Awesome. So strongest, we got sacral, third eye, and heart chakra. Yes, I love what Melissa says here. She says, my grandfather grew up in the Great Depression, so I know how to reuse and scrape every little bit of food out of everything. Yes, exactly. We're coming from that scarcity consciousness, right? So we have this mentality kind of ingrained in us of scarcity consciousness where we know that like we have to focus on that lack or else. Like we always have to have that survivalistic mindset. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So it's like when we start to see, well, how does this connect to the chakras? Well, we're getting there. So when you see that there's unconscious programming, and our job is to make it conscious, and we have the observer effect going on behind the scenes, you can start to see that how you are observing things is how you are attracting things in your life. And if you were to just think about how patterns work as a whole, this makes sense because you can see that those patterns are being drawn together with the observer effect. You're observing that, you're creating that with the thoughts, feelings, and actions. And then the pattern continues. The pattern loops in the nervous system and it loops on repeat. And what do the chakras do? They circle. So it's like a similar concept. And so one of the hugest epiphanies I had is I started to learn a lot about limited beliefs. Now, if you're not familiar with limited beliefs, the most simple way I can describe a limited belief is if you were to just imagine that your programming is like a garden and you have a bunch of weeds that are blocking the growth of your garden. And if you were to just think for a minute here on like, well, how do I grow new flowers if the entire garden is just full of weeds? What do I do? Well, the most obvious thing is to get rid of all the weeds. And those weeds are your limited beliefs. And if you were to just think about, you can't plant something new until you get rid of the old. And I think this is such a beautiful, simplistic way to look at it because a lot of the times when I hear talks about limited beliefs, it makes it mysterious and really out there. But if you were to just simply imagine it as something as simple as it's old beliefs that you need to get rid of. And when we pull out the weeds, we're making space for the new story, for the new patterns, for the new healing, for the emotional healing, and so forth, to allow ourselves to grow, to allow those roots to take hold. And we're literally taking those old roots out and we're changing them. And we're starting to create a new garden. And in the same way of looking at creating a new garden, what are we really doing? We're changing those root thoughts, those root emotions, those root memories. And this is very powerful because you can see that it's the root cause that is causing the whole problem to begin with. And it's because of the pattern. And so those limited beliefs, what they are is they are beliefs that don't serve you. They are beliefs that you've inherited as unconscious programming. And this is a problem because you don't realize that they're running the show. And so our job is to make them conscious. And until we make them conscious, they're just kind of running around and ruling the show, essentially. So when you think about in terms of your limited beliefs are simply weeds, I invite you to think about what are some weeds in your own garden right now? Maybe there is thoughts that don't serve you. Maybe there's beliefs that don't serve you. Like one thing I know, I did a ton of money mindset work, and I had to work a lot on the root chakra, and I had to work a ton on looking at beliefs of money that didn't serve me. And I had a very negative relationship with money. So changing that to a positive relationship with money was a life-changing experience because I focused a lot on changing those weeds, and I learned how to start changing the story of what I was saying about abundance versus lack consciousness and so forth. Now we can start to see here that programming is one of the most powerful tools in our spiritual toolbox, because not only are we working with the mind, we're working with the body, we're working with the whole thing, we're working with our entire mind body connection. So here's the thing. Do you guys have any questions so far? Because I know I'm throwing a lot at you in a short amount of time, and we have like so much to discuss today. So I'm like really excited. When it comes to looking at mindset, here's the thing. Our chakras play a vital role in understanding how our patterns work, because that is where the belief is stored. So that limited belief might be not serving you anymore. If you have like that zero sum mentality, like that could be a limited belief. In the same regard, if you have beliefs where you believe that, people don't love you, or if you have a belief where you are like really bad at doing something, that's going to hold you back because you have a belief that, you can't take the action forward and you'll sabotage yourself. So beliefs show up in all sorts of weird ways. And it's interesting how when we have a certain belief, such as I'm afraid of being seen and heard, that's going to stop that person from really showing up who they truly want to be. And when we look at how a limited belief shows up in our lives, it's usually connected to our energy. It's connected to the chakra system. So, for example, that one was connected to the throat chakra. So, if you have a money belief that's not serving you, it's connected to the root chakra. If you have a belief about action and you're afraid to take action, that's probably connected to the solar plexus chakra, and so forth. So, we can see how our thoughts are connected to the actions we are taking, obviously, and those actions are connected to our chakras. And so we can see very deeply here that we have habits going on behind the scenes. We have chakra habits going on behind the scenes, and this is connecting the whole entire story. You can see that those patterns are connected to your habits. Those habits are helping you see what is the unseen. Now, here's the thing where it gets really cool. So how the heck do we understand how to break the unconscious programming? The number one thing we must do is make it conscious. We have to make something unconscious and make it conscious. And the fastest way to do that is to question it. The fastest way to change programming is to question the programming. And if we're not aware of the programming, it's very, very hard to do. So that's why we have to look at our thoughts, our emotions, that pattern. We have to look at the pattern and see what's going on behind the scenes. Because if we're not pulling up the weeds, we can't grow the new flowers. If we are completely neglecting the entire garden and we're just letting it run amok and letting all the weeds pile up and it's like a giant mess, and like we spend years and years neglecting that, then no wonder we have so many things coming up for us. We have, a bunch of drama, and then we have a bunch of emotional drama, and so forth. It's because we're letting all of those weeds get neglected and piling up. And we have all of this stuff coming up for us because we're not choosing to change that programming. And that's really what the chakras help do beautifully, is they teach you that you can change those patterns by understanding your internal state of consciousness. Okay. Yes. So here's the thing. When we look at how to question, we have to look at, how do I bring something into conscious awareness? Well, we start to look at that pattern. We have to look at, okay, so if your weakest chakra, okay, Melissa said the weakest chakra was the heart. Okay, so this is really easy for me. So let's just do that one. Okay, so say your pattern is weakest in the heart chakra. Now we have to look at, okay, what are your thoughts in relationship to relationships? What are your thoughts on your emotions around the heart chakra? What are your thoughts, emotions, and your habits in the heart chakra? And how can you connect that back to your life? Like, what are the thoughts that don't serve you? What are those beliefs that don't serve you? Maybe you have some fears, maybe you have some uncertainties, maybe you have some negative self-talk. In the heart chakra, it could be a lot of self-talk, like negative self-talk. It could also be in the heart chakra. Some negative patterns can show up in terms of our relationships. Negative patterns can also turn up in terms of just how we treat ourselves, how our sense of self-worth and how we treat ourselves. So all of those things are patterns that are happening. And when we question them, we start to question the entire script. We start to question, why is this showing up for me? Where does this come from? Is this coming from my past? Where in my past do I feel like this happened? Or where in my past do I feel like this is coming from? And this element of questioning allows us to make things conscious. We're digging up those weeds. And the more we dig up those weeds, we start to tell ourselves, like, okay, is this true or is this not true? Like, does this actually serve me or does this not serve me? It might still be true, but does it serve you? Because here's the thing, if it doesn't serve you, you can learn how to shift and change it. And that's where empowering the chakra comes from. Because empowering the chakra is about learning how to consciously change a pattern. When we learn how to consciously change the emotion, consciously change the thoughts, we're starting to consciously change the habits. We're starting to change the entire conversation that we're having with reality, with that pattern, with those emotions, with that thought, and so forth, because we're shifting the energy. If you want to learn how to shift energy, it comes back to shifting the programming. The more that you learn how to shift the programming, the easier it becomes to shift the energy. In this conversation of looking at our energy and most importantly, questioning, okay, why is that negative thought coming up? Like a lot of the times, this is a good side note. Like a lot of the times we're taught, especially in the spiritual community, it's bad, it's wrong. We should suppress our negative emotions. We shouldn't be low vibe, or ego's bad, ego's wrong, right? This is jammed down our throat all the time in the spiritual community. Ego's bad, ego's wrong. We shouldn't. Well, here's the thing. What if the negative story is a tool showing you how to heal? Let's change the narrative here. What if ego is not bad or wrong? It's actually showing you what needs to be brought up to the surface to be cleared, to be literally healed. That is why it keeps coming up. This is something that I learned from doing numerous years of chakra healing, is the negative story is coming up for a reason. It's showing you what needs to be healed. It's showing you the weeds. It's showing you what needs to be uprooted and healed. And I think that is so, so powerful. What a perspective shift to realize that your negative stories, your negative thoughts, they are all just surface level things that want to be healed. They want to be cleaned up and they want to literally be alchemized. And that's why they keep showing up. That's why they keep coming up for us, because it's not a matter of only being positive 24/7 all the time, forcing ourselves to be high vibe. No, it's about understanding that it's a story. It's a story. And that story can be shifted. That story can be changed. The more that you embrace that you're a conscious co-creator of reality, the more that you can see that you can change those stories. You can shift and change those stories by shifting and changing your energy. How do you shift and change your energy? With your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and habits. When we start to see that this is the pattern, this is what's happening, this is what it starts to become about, is being conscious. Conscious awareness is the most powerful thing, because now we have the power. We have the power back in our own given reality. And that's ultimately what it's about. So when it comes to looking at what is your challenge today, I really want you to start looking at and questioning the weakest chakra. What is the pattern? Let's look at the pattern. What are the thoughts? What are the emotions? And most importantly, what are the actions, the behaviors? What are the thoughts, the emotions, and the behaviors? I want you to look at what is going on behind the scenes, because the more that you are aware, the more that you hold the power to shift it. And that's one of the most powerful things, because if you were to think about it, someone who knows that smoking's bad for them is way better than someone who keeps smoking and just keeps going about their life and not even thinking twice about it. Whereas someone who's aware, they have a choice. They have a choice now. It's called inductive reasoning. And that choice of inductive reasoning is they have a choice. I can continue this, or I can make a new choice. I can make a new decision, or I can keep this. I can keep this pattern. I can let this pattern go. And when we start to look at awareness, is one of the first steps to true transformation. Because if you're not aware, you can't change things. Once you become aware, you can start to shift and change things. Okay. All right. So for your challenge today, I really want you to dive into the pattern work. And most importantly, looking at the thoughts, the emotions, and the behaviors, especially the behaviors. If you can't really grasp the habit, I invite you to look at behavior. What is the behavior doing with the emotion? What emotions are driving the behavior? It's all connected. And that's, I think, what's so powerful is once you start diving into mindset work and learning how it connects to a particular chakra, it starts to become really weird how you can just pinpoint. You can figure out, okay, this is coming up in my throat. This is definitely coming up in the crown chakra. Now I know exactly where to heal it. And that's really just it. So when it comes to looking at what is the fear trying to teach you? Because here's the thing. A lot of the times the pattern is usually negative for a reason. It's a fear, or it's mental clutter, or it's a limited belief. And so when we question it, we have to look at, well, what is this trying to teach me? The number one question that always ask yourself is, what is this trying to show me? What is this trying to teach me? Because if you think about any pattern going on, that's a negative, of course. It's teaching you something. It's showing up for a reason. Now, this isn't about like dissecting yourself, trying to figure it out, like what's wrong with me. It's more like, why is this showing up? Why does this keep showing up? Did you ever have a situation that just keeps repeating and it keeps repeating and it keeps repeating, and you're just like, but why does this keep showing up? Like, that is the power of looking at a pattern. It's a pattern. That's why it keeps showing up, because it's a habit now. It's now ingrained to be a habit. It's like the conversation of, it's like, why do I always attract bad men? It keeps coming up. They keep showing up. Why? We're not questioning it, right? We're in the awareness of it, but we're not really questioning it. We're just like, it keeps happening. Ha ha ha. But it's the awareness of, what is this trying to teach me? Why are you showing up? This awareness is why we can allow ourselves to shift the energy. You guys have a beautiful day. Thank you for coming.